you know, whatever they do, I just come and answer the questions.
We've got the papers, so. So, I guess the obvious question is, why are you running?
Yes.
You're leaving that nice job at the legislature.
Right, it's true. Well, you know, I think there's lots of reasons. I mean, there's so many reasons. I think 30 years plus in Washington changes a person, and that I truly believe that Arizona deserves to have a Republican senator that represents our values. And right now, there's a little disconnect between our values and what's happening in Washington. What we're actually getting is DC in AZ, not AZ in DC, and so we've got to make a shift in that. And you know, I am a small government, low taxes, strong military, personal responsibility, Constitution believing, following type of person. And what I see at the federal level from Senator McCain is a big government Republican who votes for tax hikes and bailouts and spending and amnesty and liberal judges, things that clash with our party. And so, you know, there was a time where I thought, wow, it's difficult to take on the party. And it took a young Republican, actually, a college Republican, to say, you're not taking on the party, you're trying to save the party. Because the way the party's going, it's not sustainable. And so, you know, I was like, oh, all right, that makes me feel a lot better. Because I do think it's time for, you know, if you want to say the new GOP to come into place. You know, we see that at the presidential level, you know, with many of our candidates, you know, Cruz and Rubio, when we had Walker, and we had a lot of kind of youthful people that are in the next generation from the people who have been in power for decades. You know, I think it's time for that generational shift to get out of the past and into the future. So.
How long have you been in the
Hi,
position?
I'm Jill.
Hi, Jill.
I'm
Kelli.
sorry I'm late.
That's
I was
okay.
on the
Nice to
phone.
see you. Nice to see you. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
How long have you been in the legislature?
I was in for 1.5 terms, so I stepped down in December for a lot of reasons. Before December, I thought maybe I can, you know, juggle both things, and I can fulfill this term and be able to do a great job. But October, November, December showed me that it's much too busy in a statewide federal race to be able to be in the legislature every day, you know, 8 to 5, 8 to 10, 8 to whenever, you know, you get finished. At least 4 days a week, and some days more, depending on what's going on. And I didn't want to shortchange the people that elected me to the state senate. I wanted the people of Legislative District 5 to have a full cadre of representation and not have somebody who was flitting around trying to run for federal office at the same time. And so, you know, I've seen too many people who have tried to hold on to that title and that good parking space, because there is a good parking space that comes along with being in the legislature. You can park right there by the building. And then their constituents don't get the service that they're supposed to get. And we saw it. I think we saw it with Senator McCain when he ran for president both times. They miss votes. They don't, you know, they aren't there for Arizona. And so I think it also shows the seriousness that I take this race with, and I'm out there ready to win. People ask me all the time. They say, well, you know, what about your political career? Now, if I had wanted a political career, I could have just stayed in the legislature. I'm sure that I could have been reelected for 8 years for those entire 4 terms. Nobody ran against me the last time. Of course, I had a very hard-fought primary the first time that I ran. I ran against a presumed incumbent. Our rep was turned out of the House, and a very conservative guy who owns a gun shop. And I'm sure that in Yavapai County, it's very similar to Mojave County. A gun shop owner is like a god. And so you know, I was definitely the low man on the totem pole there, but I think that my message of liberty and freedom at that time resonated across the board, and our hard work ethic that I had with the team that I had in place, mainly my family, we were able to be victorious and serve in a way that the people of my district really liked, because then nobody challenged me, Republican or Democrat, the last time I ran.
Your family, Lisa gave me a few notes.
Yes.
Your family's all in the medical profession.
Well, my mom, who was just here, she's a pediatrician, and I'm a family physician. So the two of us had a mother-daughter practice in Lake Havasu for about 10 years, which was wonderful, dream come true, because you know, she started medical school later in life. She started at age 42, and I was a senior in high school, and so she was about 6 years ahead of me in the process. And so we always thought, wouldn't it be amazing to be able to practice together, but you never know if that's really going to materialize. She went and practiced in Tennessee. I was doing my training in my postgraduate training in Michigan, and it just worked out great because Lake Havasu was actually recruiting for a family physician and an emergency physician. Now my husband is an emergency physician. They weren't really recruiting for a pediatrician at that time. However, they did need one. And so we coaxed her out of Tennessee and into Arizona. We were able to do that practice. It goes back to health policy really, because she was in Tennessee under TennCare, and TennCare was Hillary Care, and she was getting about 10 cents on the dollar of what she billed, and it was, the majority of a pediatric patient population is on Medicaid, and it was just very, very difficult financially to stay afloat while being overwhelmed with the number of patients that there were. So it was a great time for me as the daughter to say, hey, get out of that, let's go to Arizona. And we've been going strong ever since. She actually retired in September, which has been great because she's been able to be on the campaign trail with me. To be able to share an experience like this, an experience of a lifetime with my mom, really has just been more than I ever could have imagined that I could have. So we've got them, and then we've got my brother, he's an OBGYN, and my sister-in-law is a pediatrician as well. So there's just 5 of us in the family that are doctors. The sad thing is that none of our kids want to be doctors. I think that they see what's happening in the health arena, and they just shy away from it. The closest we have is our youngest that just turned 18, might want to be a veterinarian. So that's close. That's pretty good. So. Hello. I'm Kelly.
I'm Jackie.
Nice to meet you, Jackie.
So what got you into politics?
Well, I mean, there was it was a stepwise approach because I never thought that I would run for office. My husband and I were always active in medical politics when we were medical students and as physicians as well. But I really wasn't politically awake to what was happening in the country, in the world, until September 11th. I mean, September 11th really was a turning point. I know it was for a lot of people. Before that day, I was building my practice, I was building my family, I was running a small business. I'd read women's magazines and cut out recipes and read my nice fiction books that kept me really, low on the what's happening politically spectrum. And I had to, that day, I can still remember my little Katie, she was little, and she said, Mommy, why does this keep happening over and over and over again? Because we were watching it, on television, we just kept, and so we had to turn that TV off and start to think about the world that our kids were going to grow up in, that was going to be so much different than the world we were blessed to grow up in. And I said, what is happening in the world that could allow something so devastating to happen on our soil? So I had to read different books, I had to watch different news shows, listen to different radio to try to educate myself on what was happening. And as I did, I started to have higher expectations for the people who represented me. And so I'd type out emails and I'd write them letters and make calls. And usually I was mad, and then I'd be disappointed with what I got back because usually it was nothing. And I don't know if any of you all have had that experience, but it was either nothing or months later you'd get a form letter that was kind of related to whatever you talked about. And then every now and then get something that was personalized. And so then Obamacare happened, and really that was the thing where it started to be, affect me and my patients and my population, my profession. And I was like, why doesn't somebody do something about this? And finally I look at my hand and say, why don't I do something? I have skills, I have talents, I have abilities, I have been blessed with so much, and I shouldn't be hoarding it to just my family or my patient population. There might be something I could do on a bigger level. And at that point, Arizona was contemplating expanding Medicaid, and I was opposed to that because basically I feel like I had a crystal ball because everything that I said was going to happen has been happening. The studies show, even the CDC has a study that says that Medicaid patients are more than twice as likely to seek care in the emergency department. And so we expanded our Medicaid population. We expanded welfare to healthy, working age, childless adults in a way that we have never done before. And so, I said, well, what's going to happen is, our emergency departments are going to be overrun with people because we haven't expanded the primary care workforce before we dumped millions of people in. And that has happened. And, we said this isn't financially viable. And now we see Aetna and United Healthcare, the big guys who I feel like Obamacare was actually written for, are saying, we don't know. United Healthcare said they lost $720 million. They they're saying, we don't know if this is financially viable as a standalone program. I'm like, really? You look into my crystal ball. I tried to tell you that years ago. And so that's how I actually ended up running for the Senate. In the Senate, on the Senate side, in the legislature, there were no positions at all. There were two very, liberal-minded positions on the House side at that time who believed in single-payer and socialized medicine. And they had actually become the voice of healthcare logic at the legislature for other members, for staff members, even for some of the lobbyists. And so my senator was Ron Gould at that time, and he was termed out, and I was talking to him at DO day at the legislature. So I was down lobbying, being a good physician. And I said, I'm thinking about running for office. I don't know, I think I'm going to run for the House. There'll be 2 spots. I've never run before. And he basically said, have some testosterone in a little different way and run for the Senate, because we need a conservative voice for healthcare, and we need it on the Senate side. And so that's what set me on the path to actually run for that particular office at that particular time. Now this time, people have, I think people have seen that I've been a very effective state senator. Last year I was able to get 19 bills of my bills signed into law. Now that takes work, it takes finesse, it takes relationship building, because most of those bills were bipartisan bills that had bipartisan support. And they were common sense bills, things that, decreased the size of government, that lowered some of our taxes, that took the hand of government off the head of small businesses. I had the Arizona beer bill, which was a great bill. It was because there were people actually in the government who said, that industry is too successful. We need to rein them in. I'm like, they're one of the few industries that was able to thrive through this recession and actually grow over the last 10 years, which is really saying something. And so I wasn't going to let that happen. So we were able to get that into place. Also healthcare reform, welfare reform, education reform, all of those things that we need to go to Washington, that common sense kind of ideas. And I think that my grasp of policy is also good. I think politically I do a good job because I can connect with people. I can explain things in a way that is understandable. My whole job is to take complicated issues and to distill them down into result. And that's what I've tried to do in the legislature and in the legislative process as well. But you also have to understand that policy behind all of those relationships that are being built. And I think that that's what makes me very well equipped to go to Washington, D.C. and to hit the ground running, because I do have those skills and those abilities, and I want to be able to use them for a short period of time, not forever. I do believe in term limits. I think that it's gotten a lot more traction lately. We tried to pass term limits years ago and weren't successful. I think that there is a mood in the country that politicians have evolved into something that they never should have been, especially at the federal level with career politicians. I think that when our country was founded, it was founded on the principle of having citizen legislators who actually work and then go utilize their talents, sacrifice to use those talents, because it should be a sacrifice to go and use those talents, and then go back to where they were and let the next generation go and serve. And we've seen that process kind of slam to a stop over the last several decades. And I think that's what's gotten our country into the trouble that we're in right now. And I think if we want to thrive economically, if we want an amazing healthcare system, if we want to be able to have energy production and energy use that is safe, clean, and cost effective, then we're going to have to make some changes in who's going to Washington. So, because I think the only way you change Washington is by changing the people we send there.
How do you run for Washington? How do you run for a statewide position? Spend a lot of time in Phoenix,
yes,
Tucson.
Everywhere. Oh my gosh. I some days I wake up and I before I open my eyes, I have no idea where I am. Am I in Lake Havasu? Am I in Phoenix? Am I in a hotel somewhere across this state? It definitely does take a lot of energy. It takes a lot of stamina, drive, ambition to be able to do it, because I do have to spend a lot of time in Phoenix. And while I love Phoenix, I moved to Lake Havasu for a reason. It is beautiful, number one. The people are wonderful. It is a small town atmosphere. I grew up in West Virginia. I like rural areas where I know my neighbor knows me, and I can say hello and not be shot down with a dirty look or a glaring or glance that I dared to say hello. And Phoenix isn't quite that bad. I talk to people from the Northeast all the time. Whew. I think people who escape from there are probably glad because of the friendliness of everywhere else. And so we kicked off. We have an RV. I don't know if you've seen it, the Kelli Mobile, and it's an upgrade from the last one. When I ran the first time, we got an RV. We had an RV. And it was 87 pace aero. Okay, so, and it didn't even have air conditioning. So, but we put a rack on it. And it was a great traveling billboard. So we did the same thing this time. We upgraded to a 1990 Holiday Rambler that does have air conditioning. So I'm thankful for that. It is a huge step up, but it's nothing like the spectacular buses that you see in the presidential where they're traveling in deluxe style all the time. But it has my picture, it has my name, it has my website, and on the back bumper it says honk. She's got my vote, honk if she's got yours. And we get honked at all the time. I take that as their support, not get out of my way. But it's great. So we are able to get around the state, do those various things, and spent 5 days in Tucson as my kickoff, which is kind of out of the box because usually Phoenix gets all the attention, but really there are a lot of conservative voters in Tucson who don't have an ear that listens to them. And so it was a great place. We had an amazing reception, and we've been in Pinal, we've been in Santa Cruz, we've obviously been in Mojave, La Paz, Yuma. We've been to Coconino, we've been to Yavapai several times. Haven't been yet to Navajo and Apache, however we're planning a trip. I'll be in Payson tomorrow night. So it's just every day a different place, every day more miles on either the car or the RV. And trying to get people to come with me. I really don't ever go anywhere alone anymore, which is also an adjustment for me because I'm I don't know, I see myself as a self-sufficient person. And so whenever someone's like, well, we want so-and-so to drive you. At first I resisted it because I don't need someone to drive me. But there is still other work that I can do if someone else is driving. Then, I had Senator Bartow contact me today from the state legislature, from the state senate, about a medical issue that they don't have as much leadership down there, especially on the conservative side, that's going through the House, that she wants me to send out some information and be involved in at the state level. And so that's, it gives me a chance to be able to put those things together that I need to be able to communicate it in a way that's effective to hopefully stop that bill. And so I've kind of given in to the let somebody drive me phenomenon.
Any questions?
I know I talk a lot, sorry.
That's a good
I have a few.
thing. Sure, go ahead.
So you're taking on Goliath.
Yes.
Now, a
Yes.
few years ago, that would have been pretty much inconceivable.
Yes.
Do you feel like this is different? This is a different time, things have changed?
Yes, I do. And I will tell you, I use the David and Goliath analogy in my stump speech because it truly is a David and Goliath battle. But I also remind people whenever I'm talking to them that David won that one and we can too. And so I've got so many people that are like, I've got your rock, I've got your rock. They're ready to help me out. And I do think, we saw J.D. Hayworth challenged Senator McCain 6 years ago, and he was unable to be successful. Now, I think a lot of things played into that. I think money was a huge factor, because Senator McCain still had $20 million left over from his presidential run. Of course, as a Republican who wished that we had a Republican president, I question why there was $20 million left. Why didn't you just spend that to try to beat Barack Obama? But he had the money, and he used quite a bit of that. The reports are 18 million, 16 million, 18 million to basically, smash JD into the ground as far as he could. And so he will always probably have more money than I do, but he doesn't have that type of war chest, at least not at this point. Of course, we all know that Cindy is a multimillionaire, so he has access to money that I don't. We are comfortable, but we are nowhere near being millionaires. And we love our life the way it is, but we're not going to mortgage our entire life to run for this office. I do think that it's a different time as well. I think that people are more politically awake. I think that they're more aware. I think the news has changed. I mean, you know, between newspaper and traditional, you know, 6 p.m. newscasts once a day to now the 24-hour news cycle with social media, you know, every second telling you something different. My mom was funny because she just got on Twitter and she was like, this Twitter is amazing. There's something new every minute, you know, and that's how, you know, I think the news cycle is for a lot of people. I think that Donald Trump's entry into the race, you know, which, you know, I haven't selected my guy yet. You know, I have to say guy. I used to say guy or girl because I did like Carly. I thought she had a lot that she added a lot to the debate in the Republican side. But with Donald Trump entering the race, he's brought people in who have never even thought about politics. Now, maybe they are reality show fans and they are, you know, used to watching the Kardashians or Dancing with the Stars or whatever it is. But I'm glad that they're realizing that politics is the biggest reality show around, and that really it does affect our lives every day, unless we can shrink the government so that we're not being bothered by an overbearing, overreaching, overtaxing federal government. And so I think that all of those things together, along with the dissatisfaction with Washington, D.C., career politicians and the elite media, it is a perfect storm for an insurgent candidate like me to come in and, you know, I do have my work cut out for me. I have to prove to people that I am a competent, capable, qualified person who is ready to take the reins and who's ready to hit the ground running in Washington. And what I see at every turn, no matter where I go, once I engage with the people, they see it and they want it. It's just, the question is, between now and August 30th, am I going to be able to engage with enough of the voter base in Arizona to be able to win? I think that my voters are going to be much more excited and much more motivated to get to the polls. It's just, you know, making sure I get enough of them that they're able to go. And I think it's definitely doable. It's amazing. I mean, it's very humbling to see the people who come out, just like Michael. I mean, you know, he's new to Arizona and he's just like, I want to get involved in this. We've got kids, we've got people of all ages, which I think is also different from what I see in almost any campaign. When I look at Senator McCain's campaign, he's got a lot of young millennials who are engaged. A lot of them are getting internship credit at ASU or U of A, or they're paid, I guess, with gas cards or with, you know, different little payment ways. But really, he doesn't have a working adult age population, you know, between, you know, 25, 30, and 60, 65. And then the elderly population, the people that are 65 and up, which I don't really consider elderly. My mom is 72, I think, right now. She turned 73. Don't report that. I'll be in big trouble. Yeah, my age gets reported all the time. Her age, you know, but she's over 70. And my in-laws are 75, you know, and my stepdad is 75. My dad is 74, and they all are so vibrant and vivacious. I hate to say elderly, but people over 65 that are seen as retiree population age, they're engaged. They, you know, I go to Sun City or I go to Leisure World, and people tell me, that's McCain's demographic. Don't expect anything. They're going to be behind him because they're his age cohorts, and they, you know, and they are harsher than the other people that are younger. They're like, it's time for him to go. He's too old. He's got to get out of there. They're like, I know how I feel, and there's no way he should still be sitting in that seat. They are very, you know, adamant that it is time for him to go. So I feel lucky that I have, you know, all of those demographics who are coming behind, that I have a Tea Party, very conservative group that's behind me, but also a very moderate group also that's behind me, along with the people that love liberty and the Constitution. And so all of those things coming together, being able to bring groups together like that has been wonderful. When I was down in Tucson, it was funny because we were doing our various events, but we stopped by the hotel to change, and they have like a happy hour, you know, from 5 to 7 or something. We're sitting and we're talking to a couple that was from Santa Fe, New Mexico, not known as a conservative bastion of our country, very liberal there. And they, you know, they told me that they were Democrats, that they support Hillary Clinton, that they think Bernie's a little crazy, and we just had a nice conversation about politics and the political world as it is right now. And before they left, they came over and they put something down, and it was a check. They gave me a check, and they said, we've never given a check to a Republican, but we see a spark in you, and we believe that you will be able to work with other people to actually get good things done. And I was so touched by that. But it shows that I think a positive message of change for good, good change, not the kind of change I think that we got the last time whenever change was used. And the willingness to communicate really can equate to getting things done in Washington, D.C.
So would you characterize John McCain as a rhino?
Well, I try not to use rhino, but I know that a lot of my supporters definitely think he's a Republican in name only. I characterize him as a big government, big spending Republican who has allegiances to a lot of other entities besides the voter, the individual voter. And I think that that's what people are tired of. In some cases, he probably is a Republican in name only. He's known as the Maverick. He's gone, across the aisle many, many times. And the problem with that is not that he goes across the aisle. The problem is that he goes across the aisle and he delivers our votes to the other side, rather than looking at what we want to accomplish on our side and using those skills as a Maverick to bring some of their guys to our side to get those conservative policies. Somebody asked me the other day, how do you work with a guy like Bernie Sanders? And, how do you reach out to him and work with him? My answer is that Bernie would not be the first person that I would be seeking on the Democrat side to work with, because he is so far to be, an admitted socialist, that I think the policies that he wants to have in place are harmful to our country. And so you have to look more to their middle part of the spectrum, and you look at people like Joe Manchin, the people who see some things at least politically similarly, and then you work on those to get good things done for the people that you represent, rather than continuing the polarization. Now that doesn't mean to be pragmatic and to sacrifice your principles and your backbone to give in. It means using your skills and your knowledge of policy to teach the other side how that's going to benefit the people that they serve as well as the people you serve. And then you're going to be able to get good, sound policy that benefits everyone, rather than just fighting with each other.
What issues are people hitting you with the most?
The ones that I see, I actually thought that the next time I have a big group, I'm going to pass out papers and say, put your top 2 or 3 issues right here on this paper. But it never fails that they talk about border security, and that border security is national security, because they're worried about both. They don't believe that if we don't secure our border, they don't feel as though we're going to have, maintain our sovereignty, maintain our safety, and so those things have to be solved. They still want to repeal Obamacare, and so do I. Economy, of course, the debt, the problem with the debt, and then just continuing blow up of our credit card limit as a country, and how detrimental that will be to everything from our economy to national security. Reining in things like wasteful spending in agencies that probably aren't even necessary at the federal government, like education and EPA, because we have state level organizations that do that. We don't really need those federal hooks and strings that are attached to those big departments who are really out of control. And I blame Congress, because Congress gave that authority to those organizations and agencies to be able to make rules without Congress approving them. And so we've got to try to rein that in. I'm glad to see Mike Lee has a group called the Article 1 group, and his goal is to get some of that power back that has been given to unelected bureaucrats, and bring that back to the elected realm, so that we as the people have some control over what's going on, because right now we've lost a lot of control. The VA, huge issue. I know you guys have a VA. The people from Havasu generally come up here, Kingman as well. And I don't hear a lot of complaints about the Prescott VA, other than sometimes they come and then their appointment's canceled and then they have to go back. But I think that's across the board at all the VAs. But to see Phoenix as ground zero of what's wrong with the VA, under the watch of the most well-known veteran in the country, if not in the world, is appalling. And there's been a lot of talk from both sides, but not much action. They've been given the ability to fire people. They have fired 2 or 3. I talked to a guy yesterday that works at the VA, and he's a veteran. He's a biker guy. Actually, it was the day before yesterday, and he basically said, I can't be fired. And he's like, I could kill someone and they would not fire me. They would just move me around. And so we have to have reform, not only of the VA, because we focus on the VA because Americans have such a love